Hello, everyone. Today, we have the final episode about the G-Class 6x6 that we built from an old, worn-out G-Class from 1995. It had a 3.5-liter turbo diesel engine that could barely move before the transformation. Right now, I want to show you a few shots of how it looked before the conversion and how it looks now. After that, we'll head off-road and test it out. I'll tell you all about how this weak engine performs on the highway, its maximum speed, and its RPMs. Stay tuned. In general, guys, we've arrived in the forest. You could say the car is in its element. Right now, we're going to push it to its limits, try some maneuvers, maybe find some mud. We'll engage the differential locks. We won't submerge it since the car doesn't belong to us, but to the client. I'll tell you up front that I've driven it a bit, and let me tell you, I don't like the diesel engine. It's just terrible. It's so slow. Plus, the car is old, and the gearbox doesn't work very well. However, the handling is great. In the previous episode, I mentioned how easy the steering wheel turns here. That's a big advantage of this car. I also really don't like the interior. There's no pleasure in driving this car. Anyway, let's go and push it to its limits.
I drove.
So, we've driven around a bit, and now I want to tell you what we've done to this car. For new subscribers, maybe someone doesn't know. It was a stock car from 1995 with a 3.5 turbo diesel engine in very poor condition, which came to us for conversion into a 6x6. We made the rear body just like the original, as well as the rear wall, fenders, and windows. Everything is identical to the original, 1-to-1 in size. Usually, we install carbon fiber fender flares, but here we used regular fiberglass painted with fine-grain Raptor coating. It's a very reliable, durable, and visually appealing paint job. It's also easy to clean. We also made the rear roll bar, sized 1-to-1, everything just like the original. Let's move on. The G-Wagon was originally a different color, but it was listed as gray in the documents. We changed the color to the one requested by our client. We went with the client to choose the paint, selected the color, and then completely repainted the entire car, including the door jambs. The result was a dark gray glossy finish. As for the side steps, we had some kind of pipe, possibly from a refrigerator, and we decided to install proper steps from a G-Wagon. We also replaced the old, damaged steps, which were in very poor condition. Additionally, we installed new mirrors in the style of the 2015 to 2018 models, but they are mounted with spacers like the original 6x6. The front fender flares remained unchanged, as they are the same for both 4x4 and 6x6 versions. The detail above the windshield is a must-have because all 6x6 and 4x4 models have it. The LEDs are original. The front end. As you know, old G-Wagons don't look very appealing. But nowadays, it's easy to transform them into the 2015 to 2018 model style because the Chinese can make anything. The front headlights are in the Mansory style. They look beautiful and dignified, but they fog up. That's their problem. The grills, LEDs, and grille are made by us from fiberglass. They're also painted with Raptor, a fine coating, to match the flares and the visor above the windshield. The bumper is from the 63rd model. These bumper lips are in the Brabus style, but they differ slightly from the original. The protection was mandatory because the original has the same one installed. It's thick-walled, also made by us, and looks beautiful and dignified. It also functions as protection. And the most interesting part is underneath. These are portal axles from the Volvo C304. It's a 3-axle vehicle. From the factory, the drive goes to 3 axles and through portal gearboxes. This means that the central bone is raised 14 centimeters higher than the original. Essentially, they are very similar in design to the original G-Wagon axles with portal gearboxes. That is, the G-Wagon's axle from the Litech company, they attach the side reducers, and it rises very high. Accordingly, you can install large wheels and have a very wide track. Our axle from the factory already comes with the side reducers. We just make a hub with the same bolt pattern as the G-Wagon and install G-Wagon brakes. So the axle itself is not original, but it's cheap and effective. These axles have been tested for not 5, not 10 years, but 30 years. They will still be running. Very worthy axles. There's a myth that these axles are very slow. But in reality, that's not correct. If vehicles have 3 axles, they have a traction ratio of 7.1 or 7.56. In our case, we can change it to 5.0, 5.9, 7.1, 7.6, and so on. If there's a weak engine like in this car, we install traction ratios so that 150 horsepower can pull this monster. This is to ensure that the engine doesn't suffocate. The car can easily reach 100 kilometers per hour. Anything more than that would be difficult, and consequently, the engine revs slightly higher on the highway than before the conversion. This gives us a more or less adequate traction. And I'll also mention that the expensive part of this project is the wheels. Our tires are not like the original, they are very similar and have almost the same dimensions and tread pattern. But it's not the same as what's on the original 6x6. The rims are a very good copy of those on the 6x6. We made them slightly wider to protect the tires. If someone asks, can you tell that the car is homemade or modified? Externally, you won't see that it's homemade or welded. Everything looks very beautiful and dignified. Back when we made the first G-Wagon, we couldn't make seamless moldings. We made them from parts back then. But now these moldings are seamless, and these inserts are also seamless. Everything is made to order. Carbon options are also available. Welding seams on the roll cage are not visible. The rear wall is clean, and no welded or bolted parts are visible. I'm 100% sure that no one will ever say that it looks strange. If you look underneath, you can hardly see any welding seams. The only thing you might notice if you look closely at the axles is, of course, the welded seams. And you can see that the axles are not original. It's not poorly welded or anything. It's just noticeable that the axle is welded in there. About the rear part. Basically, everything is like the original. We made a rear door that opens downward. We installed an original handle, and the locks are also original from the 6x6. Here are the door mounts. The tail lights. The Chinese make some really good stuff. We installed some aftermarket lights, and they illuminate very nicely. The rear fuel tank guard. It's exactly like the one on the original 6x6. We once bought an original guard and measured it. All the dimensions are precise, and it's made of thick-walled stainless steel. Here are the pipes. You can see similar pipes on some 6x6 models. But in some countries, they require the bumper to be at the level of the rear of the car. The 6x6 is high, so you need to install a lower bumper. Let me show you what's inside the body. So, the rear compartment. Here, a special board is installed that is not afraid of snow, water, rain, sun, or temperature changes. It's problem-free. We've started installing boards here with a slight gap between them. That is, 2 millimeters between the boards. This is more correct. We used to make them fit tightly, but there was one problem. So we started doing it with a gap. Essentially, this board is constantly outdoors. It's also called a terrace board, but it's trouble-free. These arches are painted with Raptor. Raptor is also a very durable material. We mix the paint without a solvent to avoid weakening it. The spare wheel is attached directly to the rear wall. There are special reinforcements to prevent the wall from breaking over time. And the spare wheel doesn't take up half of the body because if you put a wheel there, it will take up even more than half of the body. So we've freed up a lot of space. I think this is the most dignified option. All these mounts, locks, everything is like the original. If there are any differences, they are minimal. If the customer asks for everything to be like the original, down to the bolts, it's possible. But believe me, no one will ever see that there's a bolt here that's not like the original. Talking about gaps is already silly. We always maintain them. They're even imperfect. Surfaces. Let me show you, and you can judge for yourself whether they're flat or crooked. Now I want to go to our test road, where we always test our 6x6 vehicles. This road is very winding. It's all like this. If the G-Wagon has a weak spot, it will fall apart on that road. Let's give it a try. We drove on a very rough road. You saw that I floored the gas pedal. Perhaps you noticed that there was a lot of black smoke because it's a diesel engine. The vehicle is reasonable. It behaves quite adequately. You might feel a bit of shaking in the cabin, but it doesn't veer off the road, and nothing rattled or felt loose. Everything is fine. As per standard, we want to check the articulation of the suspension. That means we'll turn the axle, push the front wheel, turn the steering wheel, and see if anything hits or interferes with the wheel. And we'll do the same with the rear wheel. We approached the obstacle. Now I'll just try without using the differential locks, including not engaging the interaxle lock. Let's see if it can climb the obstacle or not. Well, I got stuck. It's easier to spin the middle axle. Consequently, I started spinning. Now we'll engage the interaxle lock. So, the interaxle lock helped, but not enough to climb up. Now we'll engage the rear axle locks, locking all four wheels. Guys, these are some amazing shots. Look at how the vehicle turned around. All four wheels are spinning, but the vehicle can't climb up. In the end, the rear of the vehicle swung to the side. If I engage the middle lock, then the wheel will definitely spin. The wheel is stuck and can't hop over. But if you give it rotation, it will lift itself up. So, you saw for yourselves how the front differential lock came to the rescue, and the car started moving. We approached this obstacle, turned the vehicle sharply. These two wheels are now in the air, look. Can you see it? It's dangling. Obviously, the car is on the parking lot, but the wheel is in the air. It's visible that the wheel is in the air. So I did this to show once again whether we welded the body firmly. If it's tilted, if the doors are jammed, etc. I want to show you this. The suspension, everything is loosened, front drive shaft, rear drive shaft. Springs are fine, no issues with the rear, they're not sagging, no problems at all. Let me show you the doors. Front ones, solid. Rear ones, solid. Let's go over there. The rear door, solid and without issues. Look what we did with the ground. It feels like a tank turned here. Let's open. I think we managed to make a very sturdy body. There shouldn't be any issues at the back, as always. There are huge clearances here, nothing is hitting anywhere, springs are not sagging. The front part is more complicated because the wheels are turning, but everything is good here. Springs stand firm, no linkages are hitting anywhere. All of this is checked in the garage. Let's go to the other side. This front wheel is almost pressed up to the bumper, there's a bit of travel left. But everything is fine here, nothing is hitting anywhere. Linkages are in good condition. The springs are custom made. These springs have been tested. We once installed similar springs on limousines. All right, folks, we've completed the tests. The ones that were very important to us. To see if everything was assembled correctly. I liked everything. Everything seems good. What are the reviews of the car? The 3.5-liter diesel engine and diesel engines in general. Maybe modern ones are better, but I wouldn't recommend the diesel engine. This car is completely dead. Not because it became heavier. The engine was dying from the start. The car doesn't accelerate, etc. Now I'm 100% sure it drives exactly the same as before the modification. Because the gear ratios are a bit slower, our RPMs are a bit higher, but the torque is higher. The engine feels minimal load. About the suspension. The suspension is very good, and the car handles very well, like all G-Wagons. I did notice that the car is a bit stiffer than the gasoline ones. Because here's a regular inline engine and consequently less weight. And the V8 5.5 compressor engine is heavier and puts more pressure on the springs. And our front springs for the G-Wagons are the same. So because of that, I feel the car is a bit stiffer than my 5-liter yellow 6x6. Not everyone will feel this, but I've driven all the G-Wagons, and I feel it. The rear behaves wonderfully. I also want to say that the steering wheel here turns much easier than in our other projects. This is because we shortened the steering linkage. Because in a previous episode, I talked about how the steering gearbox is installed in a different place than in modern models. Because of this, we had to shorten the steering linkage because the linkages were hitting other linkages and it was interfering. It's just slightly shortened, and it made things easier. Look, I'm turning on the spot, and it feels very easy. And because of this, it's easier to turn the steering wheel. I'm 100% sure the car will drive normally and adequately. You yourselves must understand that it can't drive exactly like it did before the modification. Because it's really tall. When you see a G-Wagon 6x6 in real life, you'll see that it's big, wide, with huge wheels. This makes it harder to handle, but it will drive carefully and adequately. Brakes. In the very first episode, when we were looking at the donor, I showed that half of the functionality wasn't working here. And I had to press the brakes with my feet to stop this car. Drum brakes were installed at the rear. And now we have disc brakes on our new axles, the ones that should be installed from the factory on the rear two axles. The front brakes remained factory. We only changed the brake discs. I don't remember anymore, but the brakes have improved by 50%. I've been told that I need to change the vacuum booster and so on, whether it's from this car or that. I think we'll finish and then we'll see. Brakes, we didn't change any vacuum boosters, and everything is fine. We went into the woods, and everything is fine. Maybe you saw in the footage that the front wheel caught some rust, as well as the very last axle. I don't know why. Maybe the discs need to wear in because new brake discs are installed at the rear. There are ours installed because the discs from the G-Wagon don't fit there. Also, our speedometer didn't work. Now everything works. It seems to take rotation through a cable from the gearbox. We fixed it to make everything work. It lies a bit. But with our method, like we did before on more modern G-Wagons, it's not possible to make it accurate. The correct method is to remove the scale and make a new one to show everything correctly. Because you can install a resistor or something like that. That dims the arrow a bit, but it's already interfering with the factory system, and I think it's unnecessary. I'll answer one more question. Will all this drive? Will there be any problems? Well, you know, if I say there won't be any problems, I'll be lying. We built the first G-Wagon 2 years ago, seemingly without any problems. The owner didn't call us, and everything was fine. But he'll come to us so we can fix his speedometer, and I'll do a review after 2 years with such a G-Wagon. But I'll say that there's a minimum of complacency in this project. Because they come from the factory, except that we changed the brake system, but it's not homemade. Drive shafts are from the factory. The axles will definitely not cause any problems. Rear body. You've seen in all the episodes how we treat the surface, apply primers, etc. I'm 99% sure that the rear body won't cause any problems. But it's your choice. The most important thing is that there's nothing homemade here. Because what's very important in those parts. Because anything you come up with yourself will fry your brain. With my experience, you can trust me. I always try to install everything factory made. Even the bushings, there's no polyurethane there, because nothing fits better than the original. Now we're driving on the road, and the handling is excellent. The steering feels light. I like everything. Axle noise. I've already done reviews, especially on my yellow G-Wagon. We tested it on the track. The maximum speed with these axles is 170 kilometers per hour, but that's with fast main gears. This is with a 5-liter engine, a 5.5 compressor. It might go faster, but there's no need to. 120 with an excellent engine, with another engine, at least a 5-liter, not this diesel. 120 is the cruising speed, and you feel confident behind the wheel. You can maintain 100 kilometers per hour in this car. In the yellow G-Wagon, everything was very quiet and cool. But don't forget that we've done very good sound insulation. The ceiling, the floor, the doors, the rear wall, everything was insulated. But in this G-Wagon, there's some noise, but with 6 aggressive wheels, they also contribute to the noise. The noise is insignificant, but it's there. On the Tibus portals, with German reducers, it's a bit quieter. But don't think that with these axles, you're driving like in a tractor. No, it's not like that, but there will be a bit of noise. Guys, this video is coming to an end. I'm happy with the project. It seems like everything worked out for us. Thanks to my team. Everyone put their heart and soul into it, and together we built a real masterpiece. It's all built not in Germany or the States, or any other country. It's just built in Ukraine, in the city of Zhytomyr. Goodbye everyone.